Hello, modern mystic. There's a little thing about reality. I said I'd make another video. There's actually even some other points that I'd like to make, but I think this covers enough for one video. Probably more than enough. Okay, first I think here's a picture that I think we'll both agree with. Okay, there's the material world and the mind. I'm not going to call one the real and the imaginary because, as I said, I think this is a false dichotomy. But I will. Let's just call the whole mess reality, and we have the material and the mind. Okay. One thing I'm not going to go into is how the mind makes an appearance in the material model as well. But we're just going to deal with this because we know we have the mind. We're going to discuss the material. So the idea here is that you see a mug, and the arrows in the material world are ideas here that photons and other events are reaching us. This black line, which is our interface with the world, our senses or whatever. Then we have perceptions on the other side, meant to, be, well, not meant to. The idea is that they're related to these events that get sent to us. We take all of these different, what are represented as color arrows, and we reproduce an idea of the mug in our mind. But it doesn't just give us the idea of the mug, right? Seeing this mug, it does not just give us the idea of the mug. We don't just form an image of this cylindrical mug. We also, in this case, think of Ferraris. And we think of dear old Dad because he sure loved Ferraris. So we get a lot of things in our mind from this sense input. I also could have shown some of the colored arrows in the mind missing, right? Because some of the events coming to us from the material world we just don't notice or can't sense. The reality is, though, wait a second, we don't know what's in the material world. All we know is the color arrows in the mind that are coming in, the perceptions. That's all we know. And the reason we don't know is because all we're getting is these internal perceptions. We're reconstructing this model, but we do have the model. We think the cup is out there. So if it's not really necessarily out there because we don't know it's out there, we're just deducing from this internal arrows, then where is it? Well, it's in the mind as well. Our concept of what's out there in the material world is really in our own mind. And the way to illustrate this is we don't know what's causing these input arrows. It's just our model of what would cause it. It's consistent with causing these perceptions that there's events coming from the cup. It's turned out to be very consistent. It could be a computer, right? It could be a computer sending us all this information. We would still have the model of the cup because that would be consistent with what we receive. And since it's functionally equivalent, these two things, we can't tell which it would be. Similarly, it could be that we are a dream. Someone's dreaming us. And we'll never know. So why do we choose one of these models rather than the other? Well, the short answer is because, we like to. Maybe a little bit longer answer is because it makes more sense. It's more useful. The reason it makes more sense to us, I think, is multivariate and different. But for one, if we are a dreamer, then we're trying to think, well, how can we have these dream powers in this dream? It's a world of imagination. Perhaps we can wish a reality. Or if we think it's a computer, maybe we're trying to hack the computer. And yet if we think it's a material world, we aren't distracted by those things. And we remember to look at the perceptions, to always go back to the perceptions, because there's no underlying reality. Things just are what they are, and there's a simplicity there. Whereas if things are really generated by a computer, we've got to be looking for that. And it's never helped us to look for that kind of thing, to try to think we're in a dream and give ourselves magical powers like we might have in a dream. That's never worked out so well. But really the only important thing is that we think that there's something outside causing our internal perceptions. And the reason that's important is because then that means there's some sort of an external world. Even if we're in a dream, then our external world is the dream world of some other entity or so on. The computer that is giving us these perceptions. This is the key belief, because if you believe that, then you can keep investigating the material. Whereas if you don't believe that, and you just think everything is in the mind, it's all a creation of the mind, and the perceptions are a creation of the mind, then you really have no other choice but to think that, oh, you can just will your hunger away. And the problem there is that if you think you can just will your hunger away, you'll starve to death. Okay, you'll have no reason to go. You have to at least subconsciously at some point realize you need to go get food. So ultimately, we use this model because it's helped our survival better than anything else so far. And I think that's a pretty good reason. But this shows why I say when we talk about reality in terms of the material world, we really need to remember we're talking about this model in our mind. Because if we want to talk about reality, we can't get those brighter color arrows. We have to have the dimmer perception arrows in the mind. That's what we have to refer to. We would never talk about the mug. The mug is something that's a conception in our mind. We would only talk about the fact that we saw red, that it felt cold, that it had certain shapes involved, that these shapes added together to shapes we also recognized as more abstract shapes, and so on. And that's not what we're talking about when we talk about reality or the material world. We're always talking about our model of what it might be. In other words, a model that is consistent with the sense data we believe we're receiving from this external world. Cheers.